Hi everyone, I was in London a few weeks ago and I came across this book here, The Esoteric Tarot by Ronald Decker. Now, I probably wouldn't have given it a second glance because the cover is absolutely frightful. Well, the cover looks like a nightmare AI version of a Marillion cover here. We have a man with quite good legs, but he's got the waist of a wasp. Even if he was the sort of person who was into like corsets as a fetish, you know, those people who shrink their waists right down because they think because it turns them on for some strange reason. Well, even for a corset fetishist, I reckon this guy's waist is beyond a joke. But the reason why I got this book is because it's by a man called Ronald Decker. And I read the back and it seemed to be promising. The thing is, there's this book, The History of the Occult Tarot by Ronald Decker and Michael Dummett. And this book really traumatized me. I've reviewed it in my long video about tarot books that I don't like. This book is a kind of an attack on tarot reading, on divination. And the two authors of this book spend 300 dense, inky pages bringing the full weight of their academic brilliance to bear on the subject of tarot and disproving the claims that tarot is intrinsically connected to, specifically to Kabbalah actually, but also along the way to astrology. In other words, so these correspondences that we know and love so well and that the Golden Dawn was so into and that are embedded into the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, these correspondences are false. And the tone of the book is really, it's very dry and it's very sneering and it's very sort of high-handed and, you know, tarot is for silly people, or at least fortune-telling is for silly people. It's a necessary book because the thing is that it's very factual, you know, it gives you fact. And so, you know, you might as well know the truth. It's a necessary book, but it's not particularly nice to read. So here we have a book by Ronald Decker from 10 years, actually 11 years later. This is 2002, that's 2013. So that's been on the shelves for 10 years and I didn't notice it. So is this the same Ronald Decker, we ask, who was so beastly and sneering and anti-card reading in this book? Was he in some sort of, you know, abusive relationship with his co-writer? Was he chained to the computer and forced to sneer at tarot? Michael Dummett has passed away. Maybe Michael Dummett was the senior of the two. Maybe he set the tone. Maybe he set the agenda. I think it is the same Ron Decker, ladies and gentlemen, because he is very, very knowledgeable, very cool, and very good at research, and very brainy and clever. The tone's different. The tone is lighter, and it basically approaches us from a completely different angle, which is like, you know, I come in peace. I do not come to destroy tarot reading. And on the back we have a comment from the ubiquitous Rachel Pollack, where she says, for too long the historical approach and the esoteric approach to the cards have been sharply at odds. In recent years, a number of people have tried to bridge the differences, but none with Ron Decker's impeccable scholarship. So now what Ron Decker gives us is a book which is very, very factual, very well researched, but frankly goes backpedals on the position of this book, this very, this poo-pooing book, saying there is no connection, intrinsic connection between tarot and, for example, Kabbalah. And this book, which goes deeper into the research, deeper, and says, well, actually, perhaps there always was a connection. This book says that the people in the 18th century imposed a connection to Kabbalah onto tarot. And Ron Decker says in this book, well, yes, they did, but it's arguable and it's likely that they were rediscovering a deeper layer of tarot. You know, there was a lot of nonsense about tarot coming from ancient Egypt and so forth. That's not true. Tarot was designed by Renaissance people who were into ancient Egypt. Fine. But tarot is, what's the word? It is, in a sense, neo-Egyptian. Tarot was inspired by the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt. And to some extent, the Renaissance designers of tarot thought, oh, whoopee, wouldn't it be great if we had sort of like symbolic cards that were a bit like hieroglyphs? So when you start off this book and you realise that it's going to contradict this depressing book, you get very excited. And it is an exciting book, and it contains a lot of stuff. And the writing is lighter, it's more human, it's more humorous. He makes a joke about hairdressers, thank goodness. There isn't a single joke in this book. And there's this kind of like his relationship with the reader is much more cordial. So thumbs up. Nevertheless, he is a very serious academic. That's his strong point. He is very good at research, and he does know a hell of a lot about the history of tarot. And he does a lot of original research, and he comes up with some original ideas. What I'm saying is that it gets a bit dry as it goes on, and it delves further and further into Kabbalah, and my mind swims, my mind reels. Is that the expression? Because I can't get my mind around Kabbalah at all. I don't actually like it, and I can't focus. But there's a lot of quite hardcore Kabbalah stuff in this book. What Ron Decker says is this. He says that the very first tarots had 14 trumps. They did not have 22 trumps. And if the very first tarots had been designed by up-and-running Kabbalists, why wouldn't they have had 22 trumps? So he says, no, it wasn't designed by Kabbalists. But he thinks very early on in the life of tarot, in the history of the project, probably back in the Renaissance, people flew in some Kabbalistic, possibilities into it. So they increased the trumps up to 22. And if there was fortune telling going on in those early days with the cards, which I think there was, they went to Kabbalah to create a basic fortune telling divinatory framework. That's really interesting because it means that tarot is an intrinsically esoteric thing. And he says that, in a sense, Etela is for us the ground zero of tarot card meanings because we've lost what system existed before Etela. So Etela assembled divinatory meanings for the cards in the 18th century, and he may not have got it entirely right, but he was assembling material that had been, in a sense, forgotten or dispersed and had never been really written down. So we have this idea of tarot as a system that was created, forgotten, recovered, recreated, rectified, if you like, by the Golden Dawn and reinvented. So, we're all interested in this question of authenticity and what are the real meanings and what is tarot really. It seems that there's a limit to how much we can know. And we have to accept that some of it's quite cloudy and probably always will be. Now, I got to the end of this book thinking, as an up-and-running tarot reader, I can't really be getting on with these sorts of details because I would go mad. I've been reading tarot for, I'm afraid, over 40 years. And I've been just trundling along with my Pamela Coleman Smith meanings, especially for the pip cards. And Pamela did put her pip cards together in the context of a Golden Dawn with who knows how much help and guidance from A.E. Waite. I think she was probably given lists of possible meanings by A.E. Waite. And he probably pointed out, well, Pamela, there are two meanings here for the Two of Wands, and they're a bit contradictory. And part of Pamela's brilliance was that she created images which contained multiple meanings and sometimes contradictory meanings. I don't think up-and-running tarot readers will get a huge amount from this book, except to breathe maybe a sigh of relief to know that the academics are on our side again. When Ron Decker became very specific about Kabbalistic meanings of the pip cards, I made notes, and I found that like in only half of the cards, half of the 40 pip cards, could I see any remote connection to the Rider-Waite-Smith meanings. I mean, you see connections and they are there, but it really is a stretch. And so I really have to let that go. Having said that, Ronald Decker is such a good researcher, and he is such a curious, open-minded thinker, that he picks up lots of very interesting things along the way. Like, he thinks, for example, that the dog in the Fool card is actually a hyena, and the hyena was famous for being of uncertain gender, or it could change its gender. So, we have a trans animal suddenly in the tarot, which I think is brilliant. He points out that the sign on the Empress's shield is a vulture, and the vulture was, I think, the ancient Egyptian hieroglyph for motherhood. So no matter what you feel about the Empress, and you don't have to go with it, but there always was a very clear symbolic motherhood value in the Empress card. He tells us about the moon card with the dog and the wolf, and there was a Latin expression: when you are between the dog and the wolf, there's a moment of the day where the dog comes home and the wolf goes out to hunt. And so between the dog and the wolf means you don't know whether you're coming or going. And that's what the moon card means. So the book is full of lovely things like that. And it's not nearly as dry and depressing as that one. And so if you want to read one of those two, read that. It's not a laugh a minute, ladies and gentlemen, but I think if you want your tarot practice to have a sort of a solid historical research foundation, I think this is not a bad book to have a look at. So forgive them for the cover. Dive in and enjoy. I'm Robert Farrer. This is Tea and Tarot. See you next week. Bye.